There is a new poll out, a new survey, which indicates that President Trump's law and order response to the death of George Floyd and the subsequent protests has not been working well for him. Bernard Whitman is a former Bill Clinton pollster, a former Mayor Bloomberg pollster, a Democratic strategist. He is tweeting at Bernard Whitman and is joining us to go over the numbers. Bernard Whitman, welcome. Thank you for being on POTUS today.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Okay, so people are immediately going to say, yeah, he's a Democratic pollster. Of course he's going to say President Trump is doing a lousy job. So give us what some of the numbers are showing and what makes your case for you.
I mean, I think one of the most astounding facts of the poll is when we look at people and we ask them, do you support the actions of various characters in this, in what's happened? 2/3 of the voters support the actions of Black Lives Matter. Less than half support the actions of Attorney General William Barr. Less than half support what Donald Trump is doing. And when we look at support for police reform, and this is something that people, have been talking about for a long time, but not mainstream America. Mainstream America has not been talking about the need to end violence against black people. Mainstream America has not been talking about the need to end systemic racism. Today, more than 4 in 5 people support a range of police reforms, including more training to reverse racial bias, 86% support. 84% support implementation of the Citizens Review Board to hold police departments accountable. More than 4 in 5 support banning police officers from using knee holds and chokeholds. So when we look at the response that Donald Trump has had, it's exactly the wrong response. People understand that the treatment of black people has gotten worse under Donald Trump. People are optimistic that we're at a turning point, but they don't believe that a lot can change, particularly under this president.
Who did you talk to when you say voters?
We talked to 500 registered voters just in the last few days. We did the poll towards the end of last week.
Okay, so this is national?
National, that's correct.
All right. And is there a breakdown by party? I'm kind of wondering if we're seeing a partisan split on this.
Yeah, well, of course you're seeing a partisan split, but the amazing thing, Tim, is that anytime you can get 4 in 5 people to agree on anything, it shows the majority of the country is really in support, including Republicans. We ask people, in fact, if you want to see more of Joe Biden or less of Joe Biden on this. We ask people, do you want to see more of Donald Trump or less of Donald Trump? The vast majority of people want to see more of Joe Biden and less of Donald Trump, even more than a third of Republicans. More than a third of Republicans, 38%, say they want to see less of Donald Trump in this issue. They just understand that he is not striking the right tone. And his approval rating, which most polls have, and our poll has at 42%, when it comes to his reaction to the protesters, it's even lower than that. It's 36% support for Donald Trump. People realize that the textbook definition of fascism is when he used tear gas on peaceful protesters to clear the area in front of the White House so he could walk across the street and hold up a Bible. That is what fascists do. Nobody supports that. The vast majority of people, they support the use of tear gas on rioters, but 3/4 of people oppose the use of tear gas on peaceful protesters, and they understand that Donald Trump is really employing tactics that would bring us closer and closer to being a police state, which people do not support.
There has been some back and forth over whether or not it was actual tear gas used. It was pepper spray, pepper pellets, for example, or pepper balls that was used. But I'm gathering that is a distinction without a difference for the people you were polling. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's absolutely true. People, vast majorities of people, I'm talking about 2/3, 3/4, support the right of people to protest peacefully. They do not support violence, and they draw a distinct line between using tactics like pepper spray, like rubber bullets, like tear gas, to break up looting and rioting. They fundamentally support the American people's right to protest, and they understand that we are at a critical juncture in this country that of course, COVID-19 and the lockdown and the pandemic and all of this has been fueling frustration and fueling violence and fueling racial tension, but they also believe the time has finally come to deal with systemic racism, that we can actually make a difference in this country, and they believe that Donald Trump, a majority of people in the case, believe that Donald Trump is exactly the wrong person to bring about this type of change.
Bernard Whitman with us, CEO of Whitman Insight Strategies, and we're talking about this latest survey, which does not look good for President Trump. I was looking at some of the numbers here where you note that 61 to 39% margin voters trust Joe Biden over Donald Trump to improve the lives of black people in America. They approve of his response to the protests, 45 to 38%, and they think he has made the situation better by 32 to 27%. I wonder, I don't have the whole survey, and I wonder if there were any ways to delve into that a little bit. How do they think Joe Biden has made the situation better?
I think people understand that Joe Biden is actually, A, number one, listening, B, number two, working to bring people together, and three, I think he supports common sense approaches to reforming the police. And I think all you hear from Donald Trump is law and order, but his vision of law and order is very heavy-handed. It's very focused on silencing individuals. And I think Joe Biden, people and voters, particularly not only the Democratic base, but swing voters see Joe Biden as someone who can actually listen, bring people together, evolve his position, and build a coalition of individuals across the country to actually bring about real meaningful change. I think voters recognize that Donald Trump stands for, number one, Donald Trump, number two, the hardcore Republican base. That base is not growing. It's actually shrinking. And his ability to reach out to voters beyond that, those critical swing voters in places like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, even in places like Georgia and Texas, it's becoming less and less and less, which is why you see his numbers overall falling and you see his numbers in swing states falling.
Did you have a chance, I'm not sure if it's too new or not, to find out whether or not Americans actually support the idea of defunding or, as is in the case of Minneapolis, dismantling police departments across the country?
I think that has become a big rallying cry in the protests. You saw Joe Biden sort of indicate yesterday that he does not support that. We weren't able to test that in the poll. But I think what we did test is the elements behind that. And the vast majority of people, I'm talking about 3/4 of voters or more, which means, most Democrats, it means many independents, and it means some Republicans, favor fundamental reforms of the police. They may not favor defunding, which is one of the more extreme measures, but they favor additional training, holding officers accountable, banning chokeholds and knee holds, all of these things. I think at the end of the day, it's critical that we keep on pushing and pushing and pushing. And I think a lot of this stuff, over time, it does take time to channel the change in public opinion into actual legislative and judicial victories. But we're getting people involved in the conversation in a way that 2 weeks ago was unfathomable.
As somebody with a polling experience, do you see that as a possible sticking point for Democrats? In other words, if there's a strong and vocal segment of the voting bloc that is insisting on defunding the police, does that become a problem for Democrats and for Joe Biden?
I think, frankly, it offers an opportunity. It offers an opportunity to A, listen to what the frustrations are, B, understand the calls for defunding, why that is so important, what's that involved, what's actually behind it, and work together as a coalition to actually come up with solutions that can be implemented in the near term, other issues that are solutions, initiatives that can be implemented in the midterm and the long term. So I think, the Democratic Party is a big tent. The Republican Party is a narrow, narrow tent. And I think we're going to have to incorporate the voices of those people who are saying let's defund the police and come up with some solutions that can, at least in the short term, satisfy everybody, because the opportunity is now.
Bernard Whitman, thank you for joining us on POTUS this morning.
Thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Bernard Whitman, former Bill Clinton and Mayor Bloomberg pollster, is a Democratic strategist. He is the CEO of Whitman Insight Strategies, and the latest numbers that they have, 36% of voters approve of the way President Trump is handling protests following the death of George Floyd, and 53% of voters think he has actually made the protests worse. Those are numbers from across the country, 500 voters, registered voters around the country, as you just heard. And there's a partisan split, although a little bit more or a little bit less of the Republican Party support than we have seen in more recent polls, and we will see how this plays out. Coming up,